about a year ago, I started this quest with a question. I said, Rudy, would you be willing to give me some guidance, to mentor me? And he says, yes, let's see where it goes. And so it's been a great year. Um, and just like that, I told him I'm a very good student. I'm a very, very good student. I like to ask a lot of questions. And that's kind of how I get here, a question. I believe that it is the question that drives us. It is the question that gets us and brings us here to where we are. And that has been the case with me. There's a question that has been driving my work, that has brought me here talking to you. And I've had a really interesting time trying to answer that question. Mostly I get more questions, but I'm trying. And that question is, what is something that most of us want in life or out of life that we may not know how to get? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And maybe right now you may be thinking through some of your answers, some of the things that you want. And there are many. But in my case, in terms of my work, in terms of what's driving me, it's happiness. I believe it's happiness. And I want to share a quote with you guys. And the quote goes, when I was 5 years old, my mother taught me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, I was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said happy. I was told I didn't understand the assignment. And I told them they didn't understand life. Does anybody know who said that? Yes, sir. John Lennon. Happiness. Sure, there's other answers. We're not all the same. We don't all want the same thing. Some of us want love. Some of us want money, success, family. But in my case, it's happiness. So we're going to go in that route. But where does all that stuff lead to? If you want love, if you want success, if you want money, if you want family, where does all that leading you down to? Ultimately, it's leading down to happiness. So if happiness is the key to life, how do we do it? Where do we find it? And I have found that happiness is not something you find in life. It's something that you bring to life. It's something that must be created within you. But in our search of our happiness, because we believe it's somewhere out there, we believe that it's rooted in our circumstances, and we start changing our circumstances, we make changes to our lives so that we can be happy. What we end up doing is just trading suffering. And let me explain that with an example. I was married and I wasn't happy, and I was complaining about how my life turned out. And then I become single. But before that, I had married people suffering. Then I become single, and I start complaining about my life and how it's turned out, and how unhappy I am. And now I have single people suffering. And then I go and I become, but now I'm poor, right? I'm a poor person, and maybe I don't have a good enough job, and I'm complaining how my life is, and I have poor people suffering. And then I become, maybe I win the lottery, or maybe I get a better job with more money, and now I'm rich. But now I have rich people suffering. So what we see is that our suffering has nothing to do with our circumstances. That's not where it's rooted. See, our suffering, it's in our complaining. We're suffering not because of the way our life is. We're suffering because we're complaining about the way our life is. Suffering is in the complaining, not in life itself. But why do we complain? We complain because we're not happy. But why are we not happy? Because we don't have peace of mind. In my quest to answer this question, Like Rudy said, I used to be a dancer. I still dance, but now it's more fun. But I had a career in dance. And one of the last times I went to go teach dance, I went to a house for a group of people, couples, who wanted to learn two-step. So I went, and it was kind of far. I've never been there before. And so I wanted to make sure I was on time, that I didn't get lost. And I drive up to this beautiful house. I was really impressed. And so I go early, and I'm like, let me make some conversation with these people. And the other couples hadn't gotten there, but the couple that owned the house were there. And so I asked the husband, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm an environmental engineer. I'm like, what is an environmental engineer? He says, well, let me put it to you this way. My company gets hired to clean environmental messes. What is an environmental mess? I ask a lot of questions. What is an environmental mess? He says, okay, well, an environmental mess is, think of diesel fuel being spilled on water. And it's much like an oil drop in our water. It doesn't really dissolve. But he explained that there's a bacteria out there that kind of eats up the carbon particles of that chemical reaction in diesel. But it's a really slow process. So his job is to come in, to take a look at the equation, to take a look at the reaction, and see what are the limiting factors, right? To see if he can figure out a catalyst to speed up the process. And right when he said the word catalyst, I was like, oh my God, that relates to my work. Because I often see people like Rudy, people like me, or people like even ourselves, we all can be a catalyst in someone's life, right? So I'm thinking, how does this apply to us, right? And now, thinking about that question, now I have another question. If we're a process, an evolving process, and let's say for the sake of my work, the goal of the process is to reach happiness, what's getting in the way? What are the limiting factors slowing down that process or preventing that process, me, from achieving happiness? And what can act as a catalyst to help that process along the way? And that brought more questions, more questions, and more questions, and more research. And then within my research, I was led to the teachings of an Indian philosopher named Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti, he was kind of known globally as probably one of the greatest thinkers of his time. He didn't really teach any particular philosophy or any particular religion, but he mostly talked about the things that matter the most to us, like our everyday life. Living in modern society with its corruption and violence, our search for happiness and security, mankind's need to free itself from inner burdens such as fear, hate, anger, hurt, all that kind of stuff. But what really, really caught my attention from his teachings was that he really explained in very details the subtle workings of the mind. And he also advised how important it is to bring a deeply spiritual and meditative quality to our life. And so one of the things he said in one of his talks was that at its root, everything is a thought. At its root, everything is a thought. And that reminded me of one of Gandhi's quotes. And I kind of rearranged the order of it because I just find that this flows better. But it goes like this. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits create your beliefs. And your beliefs create your life. Just remember, whatever you believe will be. So if you follow that back up to the beginning, your beliefs create your life, follow it back up. It started as a thought. Just like Krishnamurti said, at its root, everything is a thought. But then I asked myself another question. How many of my beliefs are mine? Are they really mine? How many of them are actually true? Right? And as I started to do research about that, I started to try to understand the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Because how are beliefs even made? Right? And I went to a talk on publishing a book and writing a book, and the speaker there gave an example of a coaching model that I never heard before, but I'm really glad I did. It's called the captain and the crew. And then he gave a few examples of how the captain and the crew works. But in this analogy, the captain is the conscious mind. The crew is the subconscious mind. Now we all know a ship has a captain, a crew. What does the crew do? They say yes sir or yes ma'am, right? It could be a female, it could be a male, but in this case it's you. Okay? So the captain gives orders, the crew follows. Orders given, the crew follows, right? And he gave an example. He said, when I was growing up, my dad taught me very many things that were great. But one of the things he said to me was, don't get your hopes up. In life, don't get your hopes up. And what I'm finding is those little things that our parents told us when they were trying to protect us, they didn't know that they were creating our beliefs at that moment. And they could be beliefs that are going to help us or they're going to limit us. So that's what I said. How many of them are mine? Don't get your hopes up. Was that his belief or was that his dad's belief? That was his dad's. But it stayed in there. And guess what? As he went and approached life, as he went for success, as he went for love, as he went for money, don't get your hopes up. And then he kind of like backed off. He didn't quite get there because that belief was in the back, was in his subconscious. Now here's the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is 1 billion times stronger than your conscious mind and is always on, 24/7, working for you or against you. Whether you're asleep, subconscious mind is still working. Okay? Now the idea of the captain of the crew is that if a belief started as a thought, and has anybody here ever changed their mind? Yeah? So if you've ever changed your mind, that means you can change your beliefs. Because there were thoughts at one point. What was conscious 10, 20 years ago is subconscious now. Okay? And so the captain and the crew, what he did is, write down on a piece of paper. Actually, you have to take a look at your life first, right? Take a look at the areas in your life that you're kind of stuck at. Things that are kind of limiting you, that are not serving you. Things you want to change, much like the letter that we did last week. So you could do that every day. You can write down a new, positive, empowering thought to help you move your life forward. And what the captain and the crew does is you make a list. Captain's orders, right? And you start writing it down. Number 1, da-da-da-da-da. Number 2, and you write as many as you need. Again, depending on the area of your life that you want to improve, right? And then he says you got to do that for 90 days. Because guess what? Part of that thing was habits. Whatever you do every day, whatever you put your mind and your focus on, you'll create it, right? So you have to do that every single time, every day, for 90 days. You think y'all can do that? Right? Most of us don't. We just kind of let it drop off. It'll become like anything else. Another example that the speaker said was his mentor. His mentor, when he was little, he really, really liked red bell peppers. And when they would go to the store, he would always go by the aisle where the red bell peppers were at, and he would grab them. But his mom knew that red bell peppers were more expensive than green bell peppers. And so she would always ask them to put them back. But every once in a while, he would make it to the cash register line with the red bell peppers. And his mom didn't notice, and when she did, she was too embarrassed to say anything out loud because she didn't want anybody to think that she was cheap. So she would whisper into his ear, "Put those back. Those are too expensive." And he would put them back. And that became something he heard every time. Red bell peppers are too expensive. Put them back. We can't afford them. Well, one day, fast forward to now, he's a grown man, successful, has plenty of money, and his wife calls him, "Hey, can you stop by the store and get me some red bell pepper? Get me some stuff for the house." But he thought, well, I'll get red bell peppers too. So he grabbed red bell peppers, got everything else, made it to the register line, freeze. Put those back. Those are too expensive. And he went back and put them back. But he'd been a speaker and teacher of this kind of stuff for a while, of mindset. And he says, no, this is it. This is where it ends. I have to flush this belief out. So he grabbed all the red bell peppers, bought them all on the drive. And I'm not saying that you need to do this, but this is what he did to flush it out. But on the drive home, he started throwing red bell peppers out the window. And as he threw them out, he said, I can afford red bell peppers. I have money now. There he goes. I can afford red bell peppers. I have money now. And there he goes. But he did that until he had no more red bell peppers. But what was he doing? He was writing a new belief. He was changing his belief. And that's something that each and every one of us has the power to do right now, today. You can look at your lives. You can look at where you're being limited, what is not serving you, and create a new belief. Write it down. Get a journal. As soon as I heard that, I started my journal. Captain and the crew. Here we go, day one. I have about 12 of them that I started writing that I wanted to flush out old ones and create new ones. New ones that are going to help me move forward in life. You can do that too. But it's not enough just to write it down. So you write it down, and then you have to take daily, small, actionable steps that are aligned with that thought. Okay? Even if you just start with one area of your life. Write down, and you don't have to, if you can't think, you can't be creative, Google. Okay? You can Google the most powerful affirmations, find the one that applies to you, and edit it to work for you. And write it down every day for 90 days, and then every day, take a small actionable step. If that's healthier body, more fit body, right? If that's one of yours, I make healthy choices every day. Healthier choices every day. Well, that means that when you go to lunch, you have to make a healthy choice. You can't keep eating what doesn't help you, what makes you fat, for lack of better words. Okay? So every day, if you can change your mind, you can change your beliefs. If you can change your beliefs, you can change your life. Thank you.